All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to week 6. Good and bad about this podcast. Great interview, awesome content, awesome audio. Chance is a boss. Bad news is he is completely out of focus the entire video, so that's a little embarrassing. Feel free to roast me in the comments about that, but Chance is awesome. He hiked the Pacific Coast Trail among others, Pacific Crest Trail, I should say, among others, and we talk about that and his experience in that, and just get to know Chance a little bit more. He's a really cool guy, and I really hope to get to know him better in the future, and maybe we can collaborate a little bit more. He has he's a part of a local event, I guess a local DIY band spot here in Ruston, and they have a show coming up on Tuesday, so check that out if you're in town. And got more content coming. I got a bunch of podcasts already recorded and waiting to come out. So intro music should be next week. I've seen the logo, I've seen a couple different versions of it. Hopefully we'll have that beginning of the week, and we'll have all that ready to go next week. So thanks for sticking with me, and just roast me in the comments. Thank you. Peace. Chance, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So whenever I started to have this idea of what this podcast was going to be about, Chance was one of the first people that I wanted to interview. I came across Chance totally by happenstance via Instagram. He was in the middle of PCT and had no idea who I was, that's for sure. And I followed his journey to the end, and we're going to get into that more, but that's how I came across Chance, and I reached out to him on Instagram, and he was kind enough to come on and tell some of his stories. So if you don't mind, just tell the people who you are, where you come from, and
Chance Allen. I graduated from Louisiana Tech in 2018, so this past May, and I'm just from Calhoun. I guess that's pretty much it. I mean,
so what did you graduate in at Tech?
I graduated in marketing.
Okay,
so
same here.
Yeah, so I'm still looking for a job for that. So if
Heard that.
if you have any leads,
fair enough. So growing up in Calhoun, like, where did you become a hiker? Like, where did that come about?
I always tell people it was like kind of a mixture of things that kind of went into it. Obviously living in Calhoun, it's like super out in the country. So I was always outside, like doing stuff, like just exploring the woods and doing all kind of crazy stuff outside with my friends. And then, I didn't really get into proper backpacking and hiking until I got to college. Before that, I would go on day hikes with my family, like on vacation or whatever. But before that, it was pretty much just playing in the woods. And then I also was really into reading like J.R.R. Tolkien books and a lot of like fantasy novels growing up. And so there was always kind of that inspiration playing into it. And then I always tell people I was a huge Legend of Zelda fan as a kid too. Like, I loved the Legend of Zelda games. And all of those things kind of mixed into me just wanting to do stuff outside, or just, live kind of a minimalist lifestyle while I'm walking, or, walking towards a goal or doing whatever. But I didn't really know much about through hiking or long distance hiking. And then I got to college, and I had found out about like the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, all the famous ones while I was in high school. So I was kind of, oh, that's cool. And then I got to college, and me and friends started doing shorter trips, 40-mile loops, 30-mile loops, whatever. And then from there, after my freshman year, I was kind of like, well, I kind of want to see how far I can go. So I did the Tahoe Rim Trail. And then in 2017, I thought the same thing again.
So where's the Tahoe Rim Trail?
So the Tahoe Rim Trail is a 170-mile loop that kind of follows the mountain range that forms like the basin around Lake Tahoe in California.
Okay.
So you hike in both Nevada and California on that trail. And then in 2017, I was like, well, I want to do another one. So I did the Colorado Trail, which is 500 miles from Denver to Durango. through, like the Rockies along the Continental Divide. And then I guess all of that was kind of leading up to wanting to do a big one. So the PCT seemed like the one I would like the most.
So I noticed something that stuck out to me and really grabbed my attention. Obviously, like some kid from Ruston was hiking the PCT. I thought that was awesome. But then I realized how light you were working with. Like how light,
gear,
like you were carrying very, like, seriously, literally ultra light.
Yeah.
Like I did an elk hunting trip with my brother, and we were talking about how we were going to go ultra light, and like I have a big like carbon fiber frame backpack in there and stuff, and like we're still carrying like 40-50 pounds on our back, so we weren't like actually ultra light.
Yeah.
So
maybe for elk hunting,
yeah,
you need a little bit extra, I guess.
Yeah, but like, so these first 2 trips that you did, were you doing these with other people that you knew? Were you doing that ultra light stuff as well then?
Yeah, so the Tahoe Rim Trail I did with a friend, and he wasn't really into backpacking and wasn't really, he wasn't really all about it, so he kind of just did little sections of it, and then he would, like catch a ride at a trailhead and meet me at the next one, and so he kind of just had his fun doing like half of it. But other than that, I was on the Colorado Trail. I did solo. That summer I had actually planned to do the Pacific Northwest Trail, which goes from the Continental Divide and Glacier National Park to the Olympic Coast in Washington. But I had a strict timetable because of college. I had to be back in September, and I got up there and the snow looked like it wasn't gonna melt for another 2 weeks. So I headed to Colorado and did that trail instead. So I did that one solo, and then PCT I started solo. But all these trails you end up meeting people and kind of forming tribes, But yeah, I started ultralight on the Tahoe Rim Trail, not on purpose. I kind of just didn't know what I was doing. I was like, well, I want to go way lighter than I did on all these shorter trips. So I brought a day pack, and I was like, well, it seems like this is all I really need. And it ended up being enough. But
for how many days?
I did that one in 7 days.
Okay.
So for that one, it ended up being enough, but it was not necessarily comfortable. I didn't bring a sleeping pad or anything on that one. And then on the Colorado Trail, by that point, I'd had a full summer between. I did the Tahoe Rim Trail summer of 2015. I did the Colorado Trail summer of 2017. I spent that summer of 2016 in Asia, and like I kind of did a bunch of shorter trips there, like dialing in my gear and stuff. So by the time I did the Colorado Trail, I kind of knew what I needed and was way smarter about it and had bought nicer gear and things in the past 2 years. So I had a base weight, which is everything minus your food and water, because that differs depending on how far you're going. But my base weight for the Colorado Trail was, I guess, about 7 pounds or 7.5. And then on the Pacific Crest Trail, I lightened a little bit more, and it was like 6 or 6.5. So
that's wild. So I guess you mentioned Asia. What were you doing over there?
I went with a group from LSU, and we were taking classes and working with like a college ministry there while we were doing it. And I stayed there for 2 months in China, and like southern China, kind of big like metro area. And then from there, I spent like a little while in Taiwan because I still had a lot of summer left. I just was traveling. I spent some time in Taiwan, and I had some friends there that I met with, just like Taiwanese students I'd met at Tech. And then went to Japan, spent a few weeks there, met some friends from Japan that go to Tech. So, I kind of did some stuff around there. So
it's cool that you have those connections.
Yeah. I actually worked at ELS on campus,
okay.
the English school on campus for like a year and a half. So it was pretty much people who were like students while I was working there. So
that's cool. How did you get involved with that? Like, that's not something that like every college student goes and does.
Yeah. So the BCM actually had like an international ministry at the time where they like pretty much like, if international students needed help like moving their things or like anything like that, or like needed someone to take them grocery shopping, because most of them don't have cars and stuff, and they like to hang out with American students so they can practice their English.
For sure.
So I got involved with that and was just giving rides to students, and like ended up meeting all the ELS workers and stuff, and then they had an opening at the end of that year, so I just applied for it and got it. So
that's cool. That's awesome. That's something that I was preached whenever I came to Tech is that you have to get involved in something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna leave, and I'm sure you've seen that happen too.
Yeah. There's like more fun stuff to get involved with in Ruston than people would think, or like things that are more out there, like.
Well, and that's something that I'm realizing more and more. Like, I'm 26 and been out of college for 4 years now, but like the more that I like actually dive in and look around, like I just feel, looking back, I was so focused on being in the fraternity and what was going on, the next thing and that, like I just had the blinders on to so many other things, but that's life. Can't change it now.
You live and you learn.
For sure. So yeah, were you training? Like, were you still doing little trails, or like, going working out, doing stadiums? Like, what were you doing to prepare for these, or were you not doing anything?
So I do little, smaller trails before I go. Like before the Colorado Trail, I found out about that trail because I'd spent a bunch of time that fall doing 14ers just for fun, like just shorter trips because I like hiking, but I don't, it was school, so I had like a 2-week break. And so yeah, and like I did like the Buffalo River Trail, or like part of the Ozark Highlands Trail, just little stuff. But I'm like a big distance runner. I ran cross country in high school, and I just stayed really interested in distance running after that.
Yeah.
And so I started kind of in shape just as far as cardio goes. I didn't have any of the hiking strength or anything that you really build up.
Yeah.
But I think really if you wanted to do a long trail like that, like there's really no way to fully prepare for it, even if you're hiking all the time, like to just constantly beat yourself down day after day with a backpack on in the mountains.
Yeah, it's, at some point it becomes all mental.
Yeah.
And like you just have to keep going.
You just have to keep going until you're in shape.
Yeah.
And then you get in shape, and then the miles just get easier and easier. And it's not that it's easy at any point, but you can handle it a lot better.
Yeah.
So.
It sounds like you definitely developed that in high school through cross country, but you definitely have mastered it at this point to go as long as you have.
I guess so. Yeah. I still haven't ran a marathon or an ultra or anything, but as far as hiking goes, yeah, I guess I'd go fairly far. So. Yeah,
for sure. So you mentioned something that still I don't know the answer to. That's why I'm asking. Getting there, like getting to the start of whatever long trail that you're going to, like how does that happen? Like, just we'll talk about the PCT. Like, you get to Canada. Like, how did you get there?
So I went southbound, which is really rare so the trail starts most people say the trail starts at the Mexican border and ends at the Canadian border. And every time you pass a northbounder, hey man, you're going the wrong way. So I was a southbounder. There's only like, I think this year is like 10% of the people who did it were southbounders. So it's a different experience. But anyway, we're not allowed to cross the Canadian border from Canada because there's no customs there or anything. The northbounders can go into Canada. They just have to get special paperwork, but there's really no easy way for southbounders to start. So what I did was I had a couple friends from Tech who live in Seattle, Zach and Chelsea Yell.
Okay.
Shout out, guys.
Sure.
And they gave me a ride from Seattle. I flew to Seattle, and they gave me a ride to Mazama, which is like this tiny, it's like Calhoun, but in the middle of the North Cascades in Washington. And from there, their car couldn't make it because from there it's just a little mountain road. The locals told me it's considered the most dangerous forest road in Washington. It didn't seem that dangerous, but it was kind of just a dirt mountain road, kind of winding up the side. And so I hitchhiked from Mazama to where that mountain road crosses the trail, which is called Hart's Pass. So I hitchhiked. It was about 25 miles to the pass, and then from there I just hiked 30 miles north, touched the Canadian border, turned around, and started the trail. So
wow,
yeah. So it's a bit more of a task getting there if you're going southbound.
You kind of hiked almost 50 miles out of the way just to start.
Yeah. So but I thought it was kind of cool because the first day going through it was really clear and stuff, and the second day coming back it was raining. So if I had one bad day, at least I had one good day. And also, what's cool about going southbound is, like, while you're going up, you meet the people who touched the border a day before you, and they're going back. And then when you're going back, you meet the people who are, like, a day behind you. So you get to kind of know your crowd before you because most people kind of start within the same week of each other.
So, you mentioned that going southbound is kind of rare. Why is that? What do you know what the stigma is behind?
Culturally, all of these trails, people have always gone northbound. I mean, the Appalachian Trail, everyone always starts at Springer Mountain in Georgia. Continental Divide Trail, people always start on the New Mexico border, and it's kind of just that's the way people started doing it. And I would say that also there's a lot of elitism with the southbound community, so I'm not trying to sound elitist here, but the start for going southbound can be a lot harder. You start off in the North Cascades, which has some of the biggest elevation changes on the entire trail. So you're starting off in some of the toughest terrain that's on the entire trail, and it's your first week or two.
Yeah.
And what's hard about going northbound is they start in the desert, and there's not a lot of water available, things like that, and it's really hot. But it's still it's not as intense of a terrain. So it's really intense terrain where you start southbound, and also you don't really know when the snow is going to melt. So I started at the pass July 1st, and I tagged the Canadian border on July 2nd. And on July 2nd, I walked through snow like virtually the entire day.
Yeah.
So in July, it was snowing on me and sleeting and raining on and off.
So what elevation are you starting at? Do you know?
In Washington, the elevations ranged mostly between like 5,000 to 9,000, I think. And it's like the thing about Washington is like there are definitely places on the trail where the elevation is a lot higher. Like you're in the Sierras, like Mount Whitney. I mean, like Mount Whitney is the tallest mountain in the lower 48. That's way higher than the mountains in Washington. But the thing about Washington is like the mountains there's a lot more prominence to them. Like the valleys are lower and the peaks are high, so they're huge mountains. It's just not huge elevations.
So when you're actually climbing 14,000 feet, you're actually climbing.
You're starting,
feet.
You're starting from like 9,000 in the Sierras, say, or the Rockies. You start from like 9,000, and you go to 13 or 14. In the Cascades, I mean, you may start at like 3,000 and end up going to 8 by the end of the day, or so.
Yeah, you mentioned 14ers. That was kind of what grasped me because I lived in Denver like during the summer, and I was there pretty much by myself. I had a couple of people that I could go hang out with, but hiking wise, I would go hike by myself, and that's what I would do. I would just go to a 14er on a Saturday, and get there at 5 a.m. and hike all day and crash all day the next day. And it's something about, I don't know, growing up in a halfway swamp or something.
Yeah,
just, like,
in the woods.
Yeah, being at 14,000 feet was just like the greatest thing in the world to me, and I couldn't get enough of it. So, how many days did it take you to hike PCT?
121. So I started July 2nd officially, and then I finished on the Mexican border October 29th. So we were shooting for first week of November, and we kind of crushed that goal. So
nice.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard about people getting permits. Do you have to get a permit to hike it?
Yeah, so it's more of so most national parks and wilderness areas in the United States, you need a permit just because it's like controlled land, like there's a lot of it's something that needs to be controlled, so there's not too many people going through,
right.
So you go through so many national parks and wilderness areas on the PCT that it would be almost impossible to like register for permits for all of them. So if you have the intentions of being a thru hiker, you apply for the Pacific Crest Trail permit, and then that basically is good for all of them. And if you're going southbound, there's like a 100% chance you'll get the start date that you want on your permit and everything. So it's not really like a permit, like you need to be screened and stuff like that, but it's pretty much for your benefit. Like, so when you get stopped by rangers, you can just be, I'm on PCT. So,
yeah. Well, that was kind of my question. Like, did somebody stop and ask you for your permit?
Yeah. The only times I get stopped were in Yosemite, and you can understand that. Like, tourists like everywhere.
So like, there's tons of people pumping through there.
Yeah. So like right before Tuolumne Meadows and right after Tuolumne Meadows, like I got my permit, and they check to see if you have a bear can too. So you have to carry a bear can for 200 miles in the Sierras, which is the worst thing ever. They're super bulky, and I'm glad you don't need it for the whole trail. But they checked my bear can and my permit like 3 miles before Tuolumne Meadows, and then like 3 miles after Tuolumne Meadows. So all in the same day. So yeah.
But you didn't carry the bear can the whole time.
No, you only need them from Sonora Pass, which is like right before the High Sierra, and you can get rid of them in Kennedy Meadows, which is like the beginning of the desert pretty much. So you carry it for about 300 miles, I guess, through the High Sierra.
So, well, some people have no idea what you're talking about through hiking. So, and whenever we tell them that you're carrying 6 pounds on your back, like, how did you eat? That's what everyone's question is going to be.
So luckily when your base weight's that low, you have plenty of room for food. But I didn't carry a stove, and so I didn't use anything that I cooked or anything like that. Occasionally I would cold soak. So like you just pour cold water in some ramen noodles, and it rehydrates after like 30 minutes. But that was a lot of pain to me. You have to wash your can, and like it doesn't taste good and stuff like that. So really, like, what I ate, like, I can describe as junk food. And it wasn't like, just eating like crap all the time, but like during the day while I was hiking, I would just eat, like Pop-Tarts or like granola bar, Cliff bars, like Builder bars, or like I got so tired of regular Cliff bars that we were buying Builder bars and stuff. Or just anything with like high calories in it that doesn't weigh a lot.
Right.
I mean, like Fritos, like,
because it doesn't really matter what you're putting in. You're gonna burn it off.
You're burning. Yeah, it's like you're just burning carbs. And as long as you have enough protein in your diet to where your legs don't start eating themselves, then like you're fine. So I mean, like people brought like blocks of cheese. A big thing is like putting.
But you had like caches of things like spread out across the trail,
well, I would like go into town. So like either the trail goes through a town, or it crosses like a highway, and you hitchhike into town, get what you need, and hitchhike back to the trail crossing.
Gotcha.
So I only sent, like, a lot of people send resupply packages to themselves, and like I did that for Washington because there's like 2 towns in Washington in the whole 500-mile stretch, and there's just like places where you cross like a highway with a gas station, and the gas stations will hold packages for hikers. So I sent packages to those places. But then after that, you don't really need them.
How did you find out about that? Like you have like a forum or something that you found it on?
Just on, just search like PCT resupply strategy, and I feel like everybody puts theirs online. So but yeah, like after Washington, you really didn't need packages, and you could do without them in Washington if you needed to. But like Oregon is pretty populated, and then the Sierras, you just have to make huge food hauls anyway. And then SoCal, like there's plenty of places to stop there. So yeah.
So you did an incredible job of documenting all this on Instagram.
Thank you.
It was very clear that you were working very hard to put it out there in a good form. Were you like saving, like you were like writing out like your days? Was that something that you would do when you were bored and just wait till you get service, or like putting the savings, or what?
Yeah, I made it like an effort to do it at times, and then there were times where I just was like, oh, I'll go ahead and update it. Yeah. But pretty much at the end of every day, like once I would get camp set up and stuff, right before I went to sleep, I would just kind of type out what happened that day. I would put like the date, how many miles I did, and then like pretty much like all the interesting things that happened, or like anything of note, anyone I met, whatever. And then when I would get to town, or if I had service, like there were a few rare instances where I had service at camp. Like in SoCal, there'd be times where you'd be on a ridge and you could see LA like 100 miles away or whatever, and sometimes you'd have service. So but yeah, most of the time when I got to town, I would update like the past 5 days or whatever had happened. So
yeah, I noticed like you'd get somewhere and you'd take a day off, so you'd take a 0. But like I saw one time you went and tore up the Indian buffet. Like,
oh yeah, big time. That was in Ashland, man. If anyone does the PCT, like Ashland has like this Indian buffet, and they hate hikers because like but if you're a southbounder, at that point you've hiked like 1,000 miles. If you're a northbounder, you've hiked like almost 2,000. So like you're just really hungry all the time. So you go there and it's like $11 all you can eat Indian buffet, and they hate hikers, man.
That's so. Yeah, that's funny though. So you mentioned like hitchhiking and stuff like that, and I've heard it before, but like the culture like all the people around the trail are like super nice, yeah, and like just
Yeah.
like, was it difficult to get a ride into town? I guess is what I better should say.
There were very few times where it was like more than 40 or more than 15 minutes, and at most it was like 45 minutes to an hour. It was probably like 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
And I think I did a presentation for a group a few days ago and had to figure out how many. I just wanted to figure out for statistics' sake like how many resupplies I did, and I think I did 32 total. So, but yeah, so 4 out of 32 was a hard hitch. So it was pretty easy. Like there's a lot of people who are just locals. Like imagine being in Ruston with a major long distance trail going through it.
Yeah.
And you see people on it every summer, you know? And so you like, you know what they're doing. And so you just want to help them out. So yeah, and like a lot of people are like full on trail angels, and which a trail angel is anyone who helps out hikers, but there's people who are like dedicated to it, and they'll go put out food on the trail if they live near the trail, or they'll let you stay at their house. There are a few times where people let me just sleep at their house and things like that.
So we mentioned ultralight. What was there? What if anything, did you bring the whole time, or what was in your bag for the majority of the time?
Yeah. So I switched backpacks in Ashland. So both bags were the same size and basically the same weight, but one of them was the one I started with was my old pack. And I bought a new pack, but it's all that ultralight stuff is from like these little garage companies, so it usually takes forever to get them. And so I ordered my new pack in May. I was on the trail in July. I didn't get my pack until like August sometime. So, but I switched packs, and that was my main thing. I use a Palante, if anyone knows that. It's like a 35-liter pack, and I had a quilt, like a down quilt, and that's another thing with ultralight is instead of using a sleeping bag, you use a quilt, because when you lay on a sleeping bag, most of what's under you gets compressed, so it's not insulating you anyway. So I used a down quilt, and it was the only downside of using down is like if it gets wet, it's like useless.
Right.
But most of them have kind of a coating on the outside. So I had that. I had a little torso length. It just went down to like my hips, sleeping pad, like in a Thermarest Neo Air, little yellow ones, and those get holes in them all the time. You just gotta like tape them up. All like mine right now is just duct tape patches all over it. And then my tarp was
that like self-inflating type deal?
Yeah, you blow it up.
Okay.
But it's the self-inflating ones are thick, even if they're not blown up. But the Neo Airs are like pretty much the most popular ones on trail, and they're just like a pool raft, like a really lightweight pool raft. You can
really fold them flat.
Yeah. I would like fold mine up like the size of a piece of paper and like put it in the back of my pack, and then put everything else in front of it. And then my shelter was a Z-Pax Hexamid, which is just like, it's a tarp that you hold up with trekking poles that has like a little mesh inner to keep, because the mosquitoes were like terrible in Washington. So like people from Louisiana talk about mosquitoes, dude, but like if you ever been like in an alpine region, like during the snow melt, it's hell, dude. It's like,
that's what I always hear about Alaska. Like Alaska in the summer, there's just like massive mosquitoes.
It's bad. Yeah. And it's like you swat your arm and you kill like 10 of them at once. And so that was my main basic setup. Clothing, I went pretty bare bones, like wore my little short shorts the whole time. And like the only time I switched out something was like for the Sierras, the temperatures were going to be in the 20s. And so I have a puffy jacket that I mailed to myself like at the beginning of the Sierras. And then when I got out of the Sierras, I mailed it home. So I only carried it for like 300 miles or so. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I didn't carry rain gear. I got rid of my rain gear after Washington. Like, it does not rain on the PCT. I mean, the days that it did rain were really bad, but I only had like 4 or 5 days of rain. So, but yeah, pretty much like same gear setup. So
like on some of those rain days, you're like out in the middle of nowhere, just getting dumped on.
Yeah. So like the first, like I said, like my first day, the day I tagged the Canadian border, it was just raining and sleeting and snowing on and off. And then the next day it rained all day. And then in Glacier Peak Wilderness, which is like still northern Washington, it's in the North Cascades. it was one of the most beautiful parts of the trail, but it was also, in my opinion, the hardest part of the entire trail. I mean, like almost the entire wilderness area had snow on the trail. Like, we didn't know where to go. If there weren't footprints from the people in front of us, we had no idea where to go. We kind of just had to judge it, look at the GPS, judge where we were. So so the snow was difficult and stuff like that. But yeah, when it rained, I was just in the middle of wilderness areas and had nowhere to go. But luckily, it was becoming summer, so like I was cold because I was wet. I wasn't cold because it was really cold outside. So it was like the lows in Washington were probably only in the 40s.
So you mentioned and like meeting people on the
Yeah.
trail. So like how far in was that, like day one?
Oh
Like,
yeah, absolutely. My friend Juju, he's one of my closest friends I made on trail, and I met him. He's the first person I met on trail. So I got a ride to the pass, and I started hiking to Canada, and he was hiking back from Canada, and I was like, "How's the snow up there?" And he talked to me and stuff, and then I saw him a few more times, like, you know, but he had kind of formed his own little group. I had seen him a few more times in Washington and throughout Oregon. But then in Ashland, Oregon is when me and him really started hiking together. And we hiked the rest of the entire trail together. So almost 2,000 miles together. And I met him the first day.
that's wild.
And yeah, so that entire day, like I said, while I was going to Canada, I was meeting because every summer, like, people start in bubbles almost. Like, people are like, oh, I'll start on July 1st. So then there's like 30 people on trail, and you meet all of them. And so yeah, I met a lot of people going to the border those first 2 days. I tagged the border with a couple named Zach and Jill. They later got the trail names Easy Street and Jaybird. So they yeah, and it's just random people, and you kind of form your own groups, you know. Like, a lot of the people I finished with, I had hiked with for like well over 500, 600, like Juju over 1,000 miles. So
You mentioned trail names.
Yeah.
What is yours and how did you get it?
My trail name is Later Gator. Most people on the PCT just called me Gator, which I thought was kind of funny. I would always think of the other guys when Will Ferrell's a pimp, you know, and his pimp name is Gator. But yeah, so I got Later Gator on the Colorado Trail. They called it because I was like pretty much the only person from Louisiana on the Colorado Trail, and a lot of people found it odd that somebody from Louisiana was hiking this trail. I mean, I guess a lot of people from Louisiana do the Appalachian Trail, but the further west you go, I guess the less Southerners there are. I didn't meet a single person from Louisiana, but yeah, so they're like, oh, that's weird, you're from Louisiana. So they started calling me Gator. And then I would always hike on the Colorado Trail. I'd always hike like 30 or 35 mile days and pretty much lose the people that I was with. And then I would I'd do like 5 miles and get into town and just chill. And I was just eating pizza and stuff, and they would roll up. And so every time they saw me, they're like, okay, later, Gator.
Yeah.
Because they knew that they would see me in town again. So they just started calling me Later Gator. And that's kind of where that came from. There's not much to it. Some people have crazy trail name stories. Some people have just like Juju, that's just short for Julian. So, stuff like that.
So you mentioned like like you had separated with Julian in the beginning, and then you caught back up to him, and I know that happens a lot. Is that just like, one day you're in a bad mood, and so you just put your head down and put out 40 miles, or is that you just wanted to hang back with somebody, or I guess it's just all emotions at the time, or what?
Yeah, it's usually not anything like I never experienced any of this on trail, and I don't know why anyone would bring this to trail, but I know that there were some trail families that kind of had splits because of like drama or whatever. I didn't meet anyone who had any problems with that or had any myself, but a lot of times it was just, sometimes people would have to wait for a package, and it was like we would get to town on a Sunday, and I'm just going to spend the night. Sometimes people would be hurt, and they would be, I need to take a day off, or like whenever I split off from I was with the same group for all of Washington, and then Cascade Locks is on the river, which is the Columbia River, the border between Oregon and Washington, and me and my friend Gimli were in this big group, and we decided, well, like, they want to take another 0, but we kind of just want to start hiking again, so we left, and I didn't see them again until Northern California. So just different things. I lost a lot of people in Old Station because I got norovirus the night before we got to Old Station. I don't know how I got that lucky that I got sick like right as I was getting to town.
Right.
But Juju stayed back with me in town, and the rest of our friends kept going. And I didn't end up seeing any of those people again except Gimli. So
That's
yeah.
funny.
Yeah. So just different things. People split off, do whatever. So
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's out there to do their own thing. So, you know, unless you really just want to stay with somebody, like you kind of just keep doing your own thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned running into snow. I mean, did you have to like sleep out in the snow at any point? And how was that
Yeah. So
coming from Louisiana?
So the day it snowed was so I did about 20 miles my first day. I got to the pass like midday or just before noon, and I did 20 miles and camped, and everything was clear. It looked like there were some clouds or whatever, but I thought it was going to be good weather the next day. And the next morning I woke up and there was like 6 inches of snow on the ground. So I slept in the snow without really realizing it.
Yeah.
But that was the only day that it actively snowed on me. But the rest of the time was just crossing the snow that was still melting from the winter. But there were a few times where we had to set up camp like on snowy places. Most of the time you did your best to find somewhere that didn't have snow just so you wouldn't have a ton of condensation in your tarp. But yeah, there were a few times where we had to camp above tree line in the snow. Luckily, one of the big things about going southbound is people tell you get out of the Sierras or get over Forester Pass, which is the high point of the Sierras. Get over there, because once you get there, it's all pretty much downhill to the desert. Like get over Forester Pass before the first week of October, because that's when the snowstorms start coming. So that's really the only thing that's driving you to, like, you don't have to rush, but you need to keep that in the back of your mind that you could get caught in a winter storm.
Yeah.
So I got over Forester Pass on October 3rd, so right around the time that I'd planned to. And then a day later, people that I knew behind me got caught in a winter storm. So, and it was just an early one, so it wasn't like a constant thing, you know, like over the next few days the snow melted. But other than Washington, I didn't get any snow, and I barely missed it further down the trail. So.
And I saw you missed some wildfires and stuff like that too, because I know that was a big problem this summer, and I know you ran into that a little bit.
Yeah, so the fires were probably the only like really stressful thing about the whole thing, and not really because I thought I was gonna like burn up in my sleep or whatever, but because I didn't want to miss any of the trail. And a lot of people say when you do the PCT, you kind of just have to accept like when you start that you're gonna have trail closures because of fires, and luckily, I didn't have a single one. Most of my friends either had one in front of me that opened before I got there. I had friends who they had to go around at Sonora Pass because it was closed due to a fire, and then by the time I got there, it was open again, and then vice versa behind me. I had one that I got through, and then when I was like the next day, I got service, and I found out that it closed like right after I'd passed through it. So yeah, I didn't have any, but it was still pretty stressful. When I was in Southern Oregon and Northern California, I probably went about 2 or 3 weeks with just in smoke, just constant smoke. And luckily, those are kind of the sections where you're not really missing anything. Like, there are some cool parts of both of those. And luckily, on the really cool parts, like Crater Lake or the Marble Mountains or, like, Castle Crags, things like that, were the only days there that I didn't have smoke. For some reason, I just got really lucky over and over again. But other than that, like kind of in just the really wooded areas of NorCal, like my experience was just walking through smoke all day.
That's got to be a strange feeling.
Yeah, and it was mentally a lot harder than anything else. But yeah, it was weird because although there wasn't like a big view to see or anything, you couldn't see the hill across a little valley from you, you know.
Yeah.
So it was pretty weird being from here where you can like catch stuff on fire and you don't have to worry about it if it spreads. But I was stressed out about people smoking on the trail, so I was,
fair enough.
Yeah.
So you finally finished the whole deal, and what happened after that? Like you hit Mexico, and what's your next step from there?
So I finished with Toad from Seattle, and then Juju was with me, and then Gimli, he's from New York. The King was from New Zealand, and then Alpine Pat from Seattle, and we all finished together. And and Salty from Alabama too. Forgot about Salty. Can't forget Salty. And we were on the Mexican border just hanging out, and I thought it was gonna feel a lot more like it didn't really hit me until like the next week or even the next month, or like now it's hitting me now that I'm integrated back into regular life. And,
Yeah.
but we kind of just hung out there, and we're like, well, I guess I'll see you guys. Maybe I'll see you in the Continental Divide Trail in 2020 or whatever. So me and Toad and Gimli walked to a convenience store that was about a mile away, because it finishes near Campo, which is a little border town. Like, it's a town like Calhoun. Again, it's like, probably 500 people or something. And it's just a little border town. And we started trying to hitchhike from the convenience store. We had a sign that said, PCT through hikers take us to LA or San Diego. And some lady who happened to be a trail angel ended up picking up the other group, Juju and Salty and all those guys. And she saw us while she was driving. She stopped, and they were all yelling at us. And she said, hey, I'll come back and get you guys after I bring them to where they're going. So she came back about an hour later and drove us all the way to San Diego. And then
Wow.
from San Diego, I have a friend from high school that lives in Orange County. And I stayed with her and some friends in Orange County for a few days. And then from there, this was a big mistake, but I took an Amtrak for fun from San Diego to Fort Worth.
Oh, my gosh.
That took like 40 hours. I didn't have a sleeper car. I was in a coach seat. Was not wise. I wouldn't recommend it. It was cool for like the first 10 hours. But then I took that to Fort Worth and then stayed with some friends there for a little while, and then my mom came and got me. So that was pretty much it. And for now, I'm just trying to find a job and just hanging out, and I want to do another one. So
yeah, for sure. Do you have plans of what's next?
Yeah, so it's tentative, based on job things or what I end up doing, or I'm still kind of trying to figure it out. But as far as trails go, I said earlier I did the Colorado Trail because I didn't get to do the Pacific Northwest Trail. I definitely want to do that one. It's 1,200 miles, and it runs along the PCT for like 10 miles or something. So it goes through some really cool areas in northern Washington and Glacier National Park and stuff. And then the Continental Divide Trail eventually, for sure. That one also goes from Canada to Mexico, but through Montana and Wyoming and Colorado and New Mexico.
Is it a little higher elevation?
Yeah, it kind of stays. It's kind of like the high points of the PCT, but the whole time. So, the Colorado Trail is along it they run together for about 100 miles or 150, 200 miles, something like that. And you do hit, like, you go near a few 14ers. Most trails like this don't hit peaks, but it's like you'll pass a peak and be like a half mile away. So, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that with one of the 14ers that I went to, like one of the big trails, one of the big 3 trails was right there on that. It was like, you can go here and
it was like
climb 8,000 feet if you want to.
Yeah, it was like the Colorado Trail ran right next to it. Like, there was a spur trail to Mount Massive and a spur trail to Mount Elbert. So it's stuff like that. It's kind of like the PCT. I did Mount Whitney, which is, I said, the highest in the lower 48, but it's not on the trail. It's like 8 miles off, and me and Juju woke up at like 2 a.m. and did it for sunrise. And so it's, most of the time it doesn't hit the highest elevations that it can, But anyway, those 2 trails. The Te Araroa interests me a lot too. It's 1,800 miles from the northernmost point of the North Island of New Zealand, and it goes all the way to the southernmost point of the South Island. So you kind of just do it's kind of the same concept, but across New Zealand. And then a lot of people are talking about the Jordan Trail right now. So it's just like I don't know exactly how long it is. I think it's kind of just a combination of a bunch of popular trails, and people have kind of made a route out of it. But I know like 6 or 7 people from the PCT who are planning to do it next year. So
where's that?
It's in Jordan.
In Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
wow.
you go through like Petra and all the classic places. So
interesting.
That'd be cool for an international one.
Yeah. I don't know. There's this guy that I follow on YouTube. His name is Ed Pratt, and Ed Pratt is riding a unicycle around the world. Yeah, he I think he completed it, but like it took him like 3 or 4 years, and he's on this like huge 36-inch wheel.
Jeez,
And
dude.
but he went all the way.
Off-road tires and everything.
Well, it's just one big tire. But he did New Zealand
Yeah.
and went from the south to the north, and it was pretty interesting to see what he filmed and whatnot through it all. And
I'm sure he followed the Te Araroa.
yeah, I'm not sure. It looked like he almost like just stayed on the road the whole time. But so now you're back here in Ruston, and I see you promoting the farm all the time.
Yeah.
Tell us what the farm is and what it's about.
Yeah, so me and a couple friends kind of help facilitate a DIY music space in Ruston. It's called The Farm. And basically, yeah, we just want to have something cool for Ruston and have something where touring bands can come and also local bands, and kind of foster like a true DIY, like all ages space. Because me and one of the other guys, Rupert, we kind of in high school we were going to hardcore shows in Monroe and stuff, and so we kind of picked up on those like DIY ethics of all ages punk shows, stuff like that. Yeah. So
did you ever see 12 Gauge Valentine?
Mm-mm.
I went to a hardcore show at the Monroe JCs when I was in middle school and saw 12 Gauge Valentine.
12 Gauge Valentine.
Yeah.
That must be before my time. It was
like I said, I was in middle school, so
Yeah.
it was a long time ago.
I was going during the Brother Wolf, They Will Fall era.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I'm
familiar with They Will Fall for sure.
Yeah, that's Austin's old band, but yeah, kind of just the ethics and the culture behind DIY music are like really cool to me. Like I'm like kind of something that like the hardcore scene in the 80s created, in just terms of like somewhere that's like a safe space for different kinds of people in the community. Like you could have frat guys there along with hardcore kids, along with, you know, like all different ethnicities, anybody who's welcome, you know, and then it's a place that all ages can come and things like that.
Yeah. That is like something that you emphasize and is really cool, is to keep it all ages, because there's not a whole lot of stuff for people under 18 to do in Ruston.
Yeah, there's no all ages venues in Monroe anymore. And I feel like that's kind of what killed the hardcore scene there, because those kind of communities thrive on new ideas or like fresh things and like new young people coming in.
For sure. So,
I think that's really cool. And it all kind of started with Austin Canese and David Love. They used to do house shows at the at Grandma's house, which was David's old house. And then they moved away, finished what they were doing in Ruston and moved away. And me and Rupert kind of still had that desire, that passion about just, you know, like building the community through a DIY space. And his friend Tucker asked him, like, hey, like, we want to have shows at our house, which is the farm. So, like, I know that you, like, he told Rupert, I know you guys have, like, connections to bands, or, you know, like, you know, it can be a creative outlet for that if you guys want. So, yeah, so we started doing them last year, I guess. So
it's at your house?
It's at our friend Tucker's house, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and house shows are a big part of DIY punk culture. So
most definitely.
Yeah,
I'm somewhat familiar with the whole 80s punk movement and like DC and Bad Brains.
DC hardcore is like where it all started.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, like I've kind of became obsessed with Henry Rollins for a little while there, and that is something that he mentioned, like everybody's welcome. Like as long as you're not pissing anybody off, you're gonna be cool.
Yeah.
And that's something that's definitely not accepted around here all the time. There's a lot of stereotypes and a lot of people judging people just by they're not wearing cowboy boots or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say I think that's awesome, and I hope I can become a part of it at some point and get involved. Yeah, I mean, dude, we pretty much covered it. Like, I think what you've done is awesome, and I know that what you're gonna do is awesome. So
thank you.
Keep your head up. Job's not everything.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's still enjoying life even though I don't have one. So
yeah, for sure.
Need to
just stay happy and stay creating content and meeting people and you'll end up in the right place eventually. So
Yeah, well, dude, thanks for having me.
yeah, man, I
This
really
is fun.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your stories, and I know a lot of people are gonna dig it. So
Yeah, well, I think it's cool that you're doing this. Like, like people around Ruston can see that, like I'm not special, any more special than any of the other people in Ruston. So like they can definitely do things,
Well, and that's whenever I started having this idea, I reached out to you and I reached out to a couple other people on Instagram and text messaging people that I knew, and there was one guy who, again, like I don't know him that well, but I've met him a couple times and hung out with him a couple times, and I asked him if he wanted to come on, and he was like, I'm not really sure about that. I don't really know if I'm confident in that. I don't like my voice. And I was like, dude, I don't like my voice either, but it's not going to change either. So like, you just got to accept it and be who you are. And I think, realness is really getting sold now. We grew up on the Real World, which was real fake. And now we're starting to like, content is real now. And I don't know if you're familiar with like Casey Neistat and people on YouTube like that. Like they're putting out content and it's all real and it's not that edited, and you're seeing people's blunders, and that's what makes people real. And
yeah, people are attracted to genuineness,
For sure. And that's all this is. That's all I'm trying to do is figure out who you are and what you like to do, and hopefully we can talk about it a little bit. So
oh, cool. Yeah,
again,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really
That's
appreciate
sick.
you coming on, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, dude, absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.